The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I am Rick Welch, and to my left is Billy Candy Kimsey.
My candies are jolly.
As he says it in his Got Wood shirt today. And Sarita Edgerton is here. Sarita the Rita today. You're going to read a lot today.
I am. I thought Ralph was reading.
Ralph's not here. Ralph's in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're not jacking him in.
Okay.
Behind the glass is Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
There's a kitten in here. It's very cute.
It is very cute.
I wanted it in here, not in there. Not because I wanted him to stay out of trouble, but because I wanted to be able to pet the kitten as this went along. Uh-oh.
Is he purring?
What is this?
Sounds like a lawnmower.
I think it's the new intro music.
Sinister.
And Cherry!
Oh, my.
The Annihilator Lewis!
Hello.
That's amazing.
So Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Woo!
I don't think so.
All right.
Limousine riding.
Make it stop.
The Nature Boy.
They've got a
that's me.
documentary about the Nature Boy out. Have you guys seen that?
He still wrestles. He's like, what, 94?
Listen, I met him one time.
He
He is not
He is not nature.
He's not
It's not all
handsome.
that.
he is not natural.
What do you mean he's not natural?
I've never seen anybody that color before in real life.
Oh yeah, he's super like orange glow tan.
He was
and
the Housewives of Beverly Hills or whatever before the Housewives of Beverly
Yeah,
Hills or
that
Real
was-
Wives or whatever that's called.
That was before spray tan, right?
Oh, yeah,
Ric
he did ask
Flair
me to
was.
He did ask me to drive his Mercedes. I said no, thank you.
Did he?
He did. Him and Macho Man ran to 7.
Oh my God,
Really?
Ric Flair never asked me
Wow.
to drive his Mercedes.
Well, you weren't his type.
I was thinking.
I used to be young and skinny and young.
Young and
No, she
skinny.
said young twice.
And young.
Yeah. Well, I used to be young and fat.
Cherry,
Yes.
Cherry, can we pick that mic up a little bit and drag it in just a hair? Pretty please.
Well, we got a real special guest. One of my great friends, Zach Conard, is here. Zach, thanks for being in studio with us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. He said he's listened to the podcast before, which is cool because he's come in. So that's neat.
Well, he doesn't. It's nice because he doesn't have to be shy because some of the testimonials are real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Are real, and it's nice to have a base level to come in and be like, oh, okay, these people are being honest.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
You'd be surprised. Some people come in, they've got like it's on their phones or notepads. Like Mary McLeod, she was like, I've got points, and she went through those points. Like she followed it. Same thing, with some of those. You didn't. Sarita just came in.
Well, I was going to do
She
that, but I'm
freeballed
lazy.
it all the way through.
I just wing. I call it winging it.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you can wing it. So, why don't we just jump right into it, Zach? I ask every single guest that comes on the testimony series to try to remember the earliest memory of when they heard about Jesus Christ. Do you have any idea?
I was probably 3-4 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in church, so it was always around. I mean, as far as like actually remembering the first time, I don't. But
Yeah. But it was always a part of your life.
yes,
From birth.
yes.
Wow. That must be really something. Yeah. So tell me now, from the point that you heard about him all the way up to the point whenever you got saved. Do you know when that was?
Yes, I was 5 years old when we was at an Easter play. I can't remember where. I just remember sitting there in the back on a Saturday night and knowing that it was now or never. And I got up and went and asked the Lord to save me then and never looked back.
Yeah. And so it's just, and I've heard of other people that like I had an experience when I was 10, but then like I went away from it, from a long time. So it didn't really like take. It was much later in life before it really hit me.
Yeah.
So for you, it hit you young and you never looked back.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been a big part of my life, growing up, and then even as I got older. You know what's right and wrong, and you try to stay more on the right side of things. And you make mistakes. I mean, it happens. Everybody does it.
Yeah, except for me. But
Oh, wow.
Well, Rick, you're perfect.
Yikes.
yes, we know.
I've never made a mistake. Ask my wife; she'll tell you.
No.
Watch out for that lightning.
So try to take me from the age of 5 to the present. Like and don't be quick about it. Take your time and just, talk about it. I'm really curious.
So
Because I don't know your testimony whatsoever.
Growing up, we jumped. Nobody does because I've never given it.
Wow.
This is the first time I've ever given I've testified at church. But
Sure.
I've never really given my testimony.
Right.
There's just a lot of things that you just don't talk about, and
Sure.
I've always found it better to leave me out of stuff.
Yeah. I get you.
So, I was 5 years old when I got saved. We went to 3 or 4 different churches. Grew up very Southern Baptist. You don't wear shorts. You don't wear pants, or you wear pants to church. Women wear dresses all the time. You're there every time the doors are open. And about 10, I felt the Lord really dealing with my heart about accepting the call to preach. And I remember sitting there and calling every pastor I knew at the time, just to try to find out what that meant. And I knew it was something that was inside of me that I couldn't get away from. I couldn't shake it. Every time I go to church, that's what I heard. We were going to Fletcher First Baptist at the time, and I called Preacher Roy Waldrop, and I asked him, I was like, man, I don't, what does this mean? And he said, if you know, you know. And I knew. And so from that point forward, that's what it was. And I announced my call. We started going to a church off of Mills Gap Road. I preached at Christmas the first time. I remember it like it was yesterday, and just told how God loved people. And from then on, I just tried to make sure that I tried to live a good life and hold up to the Christian expectations that, going through school. And I'd seen a lot of my friends, they were off trying drugs and alcohol and things like that. And I stayed away from all that stuff,
Can I take you back to your call?
Yeah.
So I've heard this throughout my life, right? And I just want to investigate a little bit further because I don't have that call. I always joke that I was called to preach because, and I'm not trying to be funny about it, but honestly, I was at a church called Christ Community Baptist Church, and Philip Trees was the pastor there. His wife was pregnant, and he calls me early on a Sunday morning and says, my wife's going into labor. I need you to go open up the church, and I need you to give the sermon and run the whole show and then lock it up. So I always laughed and said I was called to preach, thanks to AT&T. I wasn't called to preach, but I went, and I fulfilled it. It was terrible. As a matter of fact, I opened up the book of Jonah, I read all 4 chapters and then sent everybody home. That's what I did. Nothing to preach there, but I've seen other people, not necessarily, you were 10. No, I haven't seen people that young. I haven't encountered that, but I've seen other people that were called to preach. And tell me what that was like. What's going on in your mind?
A lot was what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then you get, a lot of the in the South, a lot of the preachers, you're too young. You don't have the respect. You don't know nothing. God's not really calling you to preach. It's more of a charity, so to speak, of, oh yeah, this is what the Lord's done, like an encouragement, but not necessarily like a respectable thing. Mm-hmm. So it was rough. It was definitely difficult.
What'd you preach about?
Anything the Lord put on my heart, really. It was, I don't even remember now. I'd sit down and I'd give the 3-point message and whatever
for us heathens, what's the 3-point message?
Or a 10-year-old's 3-point message,
the Lord loves you. He died for you, and let's go home.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Let's go eat.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Make sure you end it at 12:30.
The kids love when I pray over dinner or something because, I'm quick. Thank you, Lord, for this meal. I'm starving. Let's eat.
Yeah. That's what Jim always says, good Lord, good meat, good God, let's eat. That's what
That's how it is.
So from this time when you were called to preach, then did you actually did you preach at your home church, or did you actually go around to other churches, or what?
So it was a little bit of a mix of both. I preached at my home church once every 6 months, and then every once in a while somebody would call. When I turned about 18, 19 is when it really started. I started going different places.
Now, did you have any kind of like when you have a new believer, you want them to have a discipleship. You want
Right.
somebody to go and try to teach them how to read the Bible and teach them things about the Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have anybody in your life that like worked with you as far as preaching was concerned?
Not really.
No,
I was kind of just winging it.
just like Sarita, just winging
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that was I was led. I was 16 and I worked at Go Grocery, and I got off of work one Wednesday night and I had on a pair of Holy jeans because I was at work, and I got to church that Wednesday night and I got pulled to the back and to the side and told that I shouldn't be dressing like that to come to church because we needed to wear our best at all times and so on and so forth. So that was about the only.
Did you tell them that they were holy
Discipleship.
pants?
Yeah, I mean, I tried that.
But they're holy. Yeah.
So, that was one of the things, and that's where I started kind of questioning, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And, why do we believe what we believe?
Sure. There are a lot of traditions that come with it, I think.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think there's a lot of things that don't jive.
Yeah. So tell me about your life from the time you're preaching. You get up to 16. You said 18 things started to change for you. So
So I started preaching. We started going to another church. My family, they went from church to church. I don't know why. I just got took for the ride.
Yeah.
We ended up in Hooper's Creek, and I started preaching there. And things were going great. I mean, life was good. The Lord was good. Everything was working the way that it was supposed to. And
that's where I met you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you let your sinful nature take its course, is what I was told. And my girlfriend at the time got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was the end of everything. So
Yeah.
for then.
Right.
So we had our first child. I was preaching on the radio at the time, every other Saturday, I think it was. And when she got pregnant, that all stopped. We had a conversation at the church. I understood completely. I mean, it was my fault. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I respect, very respectful about it. And it was a few months later, I got a call, and I was told that we needed to make this right, and we needed to get married. And that was the only way that this was ever going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. 21, got a kid, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? So that's what I did.
Yeah.
It's
It's a strange thing, though. It's very common, I think, especially in church life or Southern church life. I'm not even going to say Baptist, just like any church, but to want to hurry up and get a young couple like that married, just so that I mean, I get it. Like, I kind of get where they're coming from, but you might be forcing two people together that really shouldn't be together. Maybe they're incompatible. They made a mistake. They cared about each other. They had intercourse. They have a child. Like, this happens. But does that necessarily mean that they need to marry just because of the child? Is there a biblical thing that says that that's required? I don't think there is.
I don't think so.
No, it's kind
That's
of
a good
like
question.
Not that I've ever read.
there's really not a biblical precedent for it. It's understood, I think.
Yeah.
Because it should be the ideal marriage is man and woman, and then you have a child, and then you train up a child in the way you should go. Like, that's the norm. And I think if it's outside of the norm, then it makes it uncomfortable. But because you're a preacher, they go to those different verses in the scripture that talk about what a preacher should be. Even though it's not a preacher, it's a bishop that you're talking about, or a leader of a church, not a preacher. So there's also that weird thing where they kind of hold preachers up on a higher pedestal than I believe that they should be, number one. And so they try to hold them as if they're a deacon or if they are, a bishop of a church. And I get those. God's the one that laid those rules out in the book, not me.
Right.
And so I get it, like for the church leader. But I think a lot of times they won't even let you behind the pulpit if you ever made a mistake, or it sort of
They'd
feels
all
like.
be empty, though, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they believe they
Well,
will.
I
that
get an
depends on what
amen
church
up
you
in
go
here?
to. And
Just saying.
Nature boy in here. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I find it interesting and unfortunate that they felt the need to pull you off of your regular gig, and I get that that's just kind of how things work, but still seems like a real bummer.
It was at the time. I mean, looking back on it now, it was kind of more of a blessing than it was,
Was it?
Well,
Yeah.
I have to ask though. Did they follow what we would call, those of us who read the Bible, intimately, church discipline, or was it just bye, Felicia?
I actually never left. It was just more of a hush hush thing. Just keep your mouth shut and
So
go
you just
live.
kind of
Yep.
sidled out of the pulpit
Yep.
into the pew, and that was it. But did anybody come to you one on one and do that sort of thing first?
Yeah, I would say
And did so they went through the proper channel of what biblical discipline is supposed to look like, or no? You would say no.
I don't know.
I'm not asking to throw the church on the bus. Please don't. Please don't.
That's a hard question to answer because I really don't remember much about it.
Okay.
I kind of blocked it out.
It sounds, I assume, like it was probably just kind of a social pressure thing.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I wouldn't encourage it because, here's what happens is you're forced into a situation that you don't know if that's what you're really going to do with life. You're under peer pressure, so to speak, I guess, and being young and having feelings that you don't know how to control at the time, and all these different things at that age, and you're trying to figure out what to do with your life. Number one, which I still haven't figured that out.
Right.
Two, you have a kid on the way. You got to make enough money. You got to do this. You got to do that. And then all these people are saying, "Oh, you got to get married too, man. You got to do this." So we went to the courthouse and we got married.
Yeah.
I wouldn't encourage that.
No.
Because people, it's a whole different world from going from we're dating and I see you on Friday, Saturday night to holy crap, we're living in the same house. You don't clean the way that I like things clean. You don't, I don't do this. I'm gone all the time trying to make a living. It was just a constant butting heads.
Yeah.
Relationships be like that.
That's right.
They
Absolutely.
are.
Life
They're
be
hard.
like that.
Life be like that.
Yeah. So obviously you were preaching at the time. You were in church at the time. There was some premarital sex going on.
Absolutely.
And then the baby.
He leaned into that one.
You dang right I did. Woo! Nature boy. No, but you're just like any other man in the world.
Right.
You have desires and things. And as far as like what's expected of a preacher or a person that's, standing in a pulpit of a church, he's trying, a lot of times when we go to church, like we're going to hear them preach. And I've always wondered, like when our church life, a lot of times it feels like the preacher's preaching at the congregation, almost like we always need to get saved every week. It feels like that. It's almost, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like there's, like you're taking the scripture and you're expounding from the scripture and you're trying to help people. Like this is how you can live your life. Like this is what, for instance, this is what Christ did. We're supposed to live like Christ. These are things that you can do. I mean, I think that there is that, but in our world down here in the South, it feels like we're getting preached at sometimes.
Absolutely.
Am I wrong, Cherry?
No.
I think a lot of it's they always say, you need to get off the milk and get on the meat. But nobody will ever make that transition.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of preachers are focused on, you need to be saved. You're going to go to hell. You're going to do this. You're a sinner, and everybody's a sinner.
Yeah.
Nobody ever breaks that being a sinner part into actually learning what the Bible's teaching.
Yeah.
You never get past that you're a sinner phase. So if you're always sitting there looking at life like I'm a sinner, then why are you wanting to do any better?
Yeah, there's a song that Cherry sings actually, I'm a sinner saved by grace. Have you ever thought about changing the words to I'm a saint saved by grace? Because isn't that what you are?
I am, but I'm okay being a sinner.
You are.
I am.
You know what God says about sin.
I know that. But as long as I'm in this flesh, it's here. I'm here.
I know, but aren't you a saint according to the scripture?
According to scripture, yeah.
So why do we focus so much on the sinner side of our lives instead of the saintly side?
Because it's more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say, honestly, for me
the
personally,
sin part is more fun.
Well, no, but I mean,
Well, yeah.
you're going to tell a bad story before a good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the news is so popular.
Every time a plane lands safely, really, we're not going to talk about it.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
not.
So let's
it's
talk
not
about
really-
sin. That's more scary.
Yeah.
It's
no.
That's the same thing people talk about the news all the
Well,
time.
That's
Like,
not
why
it.
is the news always murder? And you're like, because that's the exception.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not for me.
What is
Yeah,
it?
when you think about the words of the song, I know that I'm a saint only through God's grace, but it humbles you enough to remember that you are still that sinner in this flesh. And the only reason that you are even where you're at is through grace.
Yeah.
So it's not that I need to be up there singing, I'm a saint saved by grace.
So whenever Christ, we're
But
going to
Paul
get back to you, Zach.
says-
This
No,
is
you're
good.
fine.
This is the first time in a testimony series we've actually got into a conversation like this. This is good.
Paul says, I am the chief of all sinners.
Yes.
And then in like 2 chapters later, he says, but your grace is sufficient for even me.
Yeah.
So he's both.
Yeah.
I mean, he's both there, and he knows most of the time if I'm given the choice, I'm probably going to fail.
I agree with you, but he doesn't ever start a letter to the sinners at
No.
Ephesus or to the sinners at
To the
Thessalonians
church at
or the saints.
sometimes.
To the saints, well, not always. Not always. No, you're right. But he does. He talks to them like saints. Sometimes I feel like the young preachers in our world today. The reason why we have so few today now than we've ever had in the history of our country is because of this. The way that our church life is set up today. And I don't think that it's accurate. I think that the way our churches are set up are actually wrong, because what we're doing is we're boxing in the church in these brick and mortar places, and then we're preaching to the choir instead of going outside of those brick and mortars and actually talking to the people that need to hear it, or going and helping people. I mean, you do. I know you go out and help people, Sarita, but you see what I mean? And I know like you're getting ready to go out to Idaho and help, some kids, but that's all I'm saying. I think that Zach is no different than a lot of normal men that I know, but they didn't have that call to preach on him. So it's almost like the call to preach lifts you up. It puts you on a pedestal.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like, did you ever have pride, like wanting that pedestal?
No,
No.
I don't want to be left alone.
Yeah.
I don't like people. I am not a people person. I hate them.
So God called you to preach.
You can ask my wife. We go into a crowd and there's way too many people, and I start freaking out. I'm done. I'm ready to go.
Right.
I don't like talking to people. Even coming here, I've been nervous for a week knowing that I was coming.
Yeah.
And there's 5 people here. So
Right.
I remember there was times where it would be a Sunday night or something, and I was preaching and I would be puking before I walked up there, just knowing that I had to go. Like,
Wow.
And then when you leave that everybody's watching you. Like, nobody pays attention to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Nobody's really listening to, and I'm guilty of it. I go to church on Sundays, and sometimes I'm sitting there like, holy cow, would you please just shut up?
Yeah.
Like, I am starving. I am tired. I am ready to go. Like, that's enough, dude. Let's
Yeah.
go. Wrap it up. And I feel like that was a lot of the times, but then it's like, well, he was up there Sunday preaching. Let's, we're going to keep an extra special eye on him this week.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. That's how it still is. There's people that still, I'm the topic of conversation, and we'll get to that later, but you're still the topic of conversation at times. You're famous in a small town.
That answers a question I had where it sounded like maybe you were, after a while, you were thankful from the break that you got by being taken off the air. It sounds like in the long term, maybe you were pretty okay with that.
Well, I actually went back, and we'll get. I currently don't. Now I'm not doing anything. Mm-hmm. I disagree with most of what takes place in the church. If somebody tells me they're a Christian or wants to talk about the Bible, I typically accept it. Except for Rick, I don't. Mm-hmm. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. I could care less what they have to say about it, because it's a biased judgment that has been taught, and you've never studied that on your own. And I feel like that's where a lot of Christians come from. I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, we did that quote from J.I. Packer. That's what I always think about how, and I don't have it in front of me, but basically he says that we don't become Christians like without having some sort of an impact from someone else, whether it's through sermons or through church life or whatever it would be. And so we basically build a worldview by what we were taught. Like we become a Christian. When you become a Christian, you are in a vulnerable state. Number one, you understand that between you and the Creator that there's a problem, and someone's convinced you of that.
Right.
No matter what age you are, you come to that realization that there's something wrong between you and the Creator.
Right.
And so how do you bridge that gap? And they tell you, well, the only way to bridge that gap is through Christ. And so we have different ways that we reach out to them. Some churches say to say this particular sinner's prayer. Some people get saved, at the altar. Some people get saved on the 6th pew from the back of the church on the right-hand side. Some people get saved in their car. Some people, it happens at different times. But I've always found that the culture itself, you see people, and I haven't really seen you, Cherry, necessarily, but I've seen people where they get saved and saved again. Not
I know what you're talking about, but no.
Not for you. I mean, it was very, very real, but I think the reason why it's different for you, Cherry, is that you weren't necessarily raised in church. And so by the time you and how old were you when you got saved? So you'd lived 37 perfect years with no problems and then found Jesus. No, you had a life. You finally got to that place where you're like, are you real? Like, now I need you now. And so when you reached out, it was like a radical change for you. Right. But for people that are raised in the church, it's very different. Wouldn't you say that, Zach?
I would absolutely say that. Because
you're in a culture now. And so even like the call to preach, I've seen people go take the call because they felt that's what they should be doing. Because they were really smart, or because they read the Bible well and they knew it well, or because they were a good deacon, or whatever it might be, that they should be preaching. Right? Even though they may not have the call, but because somebody says something, then in their brain it becomes the call, and they convince themselves, it's kind of the same way about getting resaved. Like that, the fact is that how many times have you ever heard we're leaky vessels?
Oh, yeah.
Because we are leaky vessels.
Right.
Every human being is going to fall. All of us are going to fall.
I feel a lot of it is, there's things that happen in a church that you don't experience every day, like the presence of the Lord, so to speak. And you hear of church services where the presence of God was so engulfed in the church that people they're just overwhelmed with it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what else to do. You do feel like a sinner. You do feel like this. You do feel like that. And so you do go get saved, or you get saved again, or you rededicate, or all of these things that take place, and it all boils back to you never grew to begin with. There was never a spiritual. There's never a spiritual growth. I started experiencing a spiritual growth at one point in my life, and I still do. Like I feel like I'm still growing in the Lord. I feel like I'm an idiot, but I feel like I'm still growing. And when you feel like you're growing and you're moving towards something, you're not ever looking back at where you was at.
No, I get it. But now, I mean, don't take this the wrong way. Like, I'm not tooting your horn, but one of the most powerful times that I ever experienced inside of a church building was in the middle of a play. And you were playing a soldier in that play. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, you just started preaching. Like in the middle of the play. And that was unusual. We've had people testify, we've had people think, but like I saw you just like break out and the whole freaking church ran to the altar. I don't know if you remember that night, but I do.
Not really.
Well, I do. It was a very powerful night. And you talk about, Brian Coates always said he loved being in those services where you could reach out and touch God with your thumb. Like you could feel the presence in the house, It felt like that night. So I know that even though you might think you're an idiot. I don't think you're an idiot by any stretch, but that I've seen it. I've seen where and this was in a church building, which would have been a normal place, but it was a very abnormal service, very abnormal circumstances. And I watched people like run to the altar, which I've never seen a human being run to the altar. That was cool. I also saw a couple people getting drugged to the altar, which probably didn't work out for them. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. But I remember that. And so I've seen you, whenever the Lord's used you, I've watched that happen. And I'm a person that gets into groupthink. Like, I don't really, I just realized Andy's over there cuddling a kitten. That's really funny. But so I've seen you in these unusual circumstances, right? Now, before the play, like, was there anything different in your life? Were you prayed up, or was there something going on? Like, I've been in those plays, and so I know.
I just wake up every day and give it my best.
Yeah.
Even then, like, I don't do anything. I don't, we gotta go to church today, so let's make sure we pray 16 times before we get there. I just get up and go.
Yeah.
Half the time, I don't even pray over my meal.
Right.
I'm really bad for that. Like, I'm surprised I haven't choked yet, according to my parents. It's like, you got to pray over your food or God's going to allow you to get choked on it. Yeah.
There's a.
I didn't.
I need to see that scripture verse.
Right.
Well, can we go back to where you were
Heimlich,
kind of
verse 3, chapter 4.
not forced, talked into marriage with the girl, your new child,
Yeah. So
and it's a bad marriage because she didn't know how to clean or something?
yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons. I think we was both young and foolish at the time, and it was. I wouldn't say it was a mistake because it gave me the 3 of the greatest blessings that I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
My 3 kids, they're amazing, and I wouldn't trade them for anything in this world. However, the 6 years I was with their mother, I would like to go back and try that again.
Yeah.
Not with her.
That's not nice. That's not nice.
Just the truth.
Just keeping it real.
It was
tell a
a
lie.
very different time. And I remember, after we got married, everything went back to normal. It was like nothing had ever happened. It was
So all your sin had been wiped away.
It just went away. And I remember, really trying to focus on growing and living to the expectations of what everybody around you was looking at. You shouldn't cuss, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that.
So you were still in church? Yeah. So Sundays, Wednesdays?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I never really got mad at that point.
Okay.
I understood. And I guess, I started going to Bible college. I really started trying to focus on studying and making sure that I knew what I was talking about. And my second son was born. And when he was born, when we found out she was pregnant with him, it was a very trying time because they told us at our first ultrasound that he had Downs. He had a hole in his heart. They was going to have to do open heart surgery as soon as he was born. The doctor told us that we was better off just aborting him. I think they got every day we didn't.
Evil.
They told us we should do that and this was a Christian OBG. That it wasn't worth dealing with. It wasn't, it was going to be too many trouble. He probably wasn't going to make it. And I really set out to prove that was not, that it was going to make it. Mm-hmm. And me and the doctor had a really nice, colorful conversation about that.
Yeah.
Amen.
I told him, and that's not happening. And here's all the information. I don't need your information. I didn't need the information.
Yeah.
I knew that whatever it was going to be, it was going to be.
Did you consider yourself pro-life?
I just considered
just didn't think
myself
about
a
it much?
very pissed off parent.
Gotcha.
I had my first son on the way, and they wasn't nobody going to take that away from me. If God himself would have took him, I'd have been okay with it. But other than that, I wasn't going to be talked into it. And it was 3 or 4 appointments that's all it was. Hey, this is it, and so on and so forth. And let me back up just a little bit. I grew up, and my dad wasn't around much, so I didn't really have that father figure to lean on like most people. I had my granddad, and he done a great job. God rest his soul. He's been gone now for 3 years, and if he hadn't been around at the time, I don't know if things would have been different.
Yeah.
They very well could have been, but he was a very strong spiritual leader in our house and in our home, and I thank the Lord he was there because, there was a lot of trying times leading, even before that we ain't got time to go into, but we're hitting the highlights today.
Yeah.
We were in the hospital and we were getting an ultrasound done once a week, and then it was twice a week, and he was born, and we were in the NICU for 3 months. He had to have a feeding tube put down his nose. His heart was, the blood was mixing. I don't even understand all that took place. I just know it was real bad.
Probably passing between different chambers.
Yeah, I think that's what they explained to me to where I could understand, but I don't know what that's called.
Yeah.
And we brung him home 3 months later. Then we were in and out of the hospital because he wouldn't eat. They decided to do open heart surgery at 6 months old. We took him to Charlotte. Just the stress of everything going on. The only thing that I had to lean on was the Lord. Mm-hmm. I started questioning whether or not he was listening, whether or not he cared, whether or not that he was even answering prayers. We left down there and came home, and it was Christmas Eve. We took the kids to see everybody. Everybody was excited to get to see Braden and hold him, and because nobody really had the chance to be around him at that point. We got home Christmas Eve night, and he quit breathing on us in the middle of the night. And I don't know what I do. I guess it was the Lord that woke me up and said, "Hey, go check on him." And I went in there, and his face was blue. I called 911. They couldn't figure out where my house was. So we got in the car and we hauled ass and to my grandparents' house because I knew they knew where it was. And we got over there, and he had took 2 breaths between our house and their house. And EMS rolled up, and they took him and rushed him to Mission. We found out that he had complete tracheal rings. And for those that don't know what that is, most people's cartilage in their trachea is a C-shaped. As you grow, your trachea grows. Well, his doesn't. His is the size of a end of a pin, very small. So anytime he gets what they consider the croup, we go to the hospital. We were in the hospital forever. They couldn't figure out what it was. We went to Winston-Salem. They flew him down there. They finally are the ones that told us what was going on, and he's going to have another surgery, and it was this and it was that, and the whole time I'm just like, holy cow, what do I do? So I really started praying and asking the Lord, use this to benefit you. And ultimately, at the time in my life, that's how I felt about everything. Is everything happens for a reason. I still feel that way. Whatever you're going through in life, I don't feel that you really have any control over it. I've experienced way too much to say that you have control over your own life, because you don't. There's, what's going to take place is going to take place. And, it's going to happen the way that it's going to happen, good or bad. We finally came home and went to church, and, I was still preaching. I was actually preaching more then than I ever had. And I remember standing at the back of the church one Sunday, and a lady come out and she looked at me and she says, "The life you're living is why he's dealing with so much." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? It's the sin in your life is why he's having so many problems." I was like, "Okay, well, what sin exactly are you speaking of that, okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you feel that way. I don't really know how to respond to that. So have a good day." And it was just stuff like that, on and on. There was 2 or 3 others that said that and this, and I'm like,
does it start to wear you out after a while?
There was a lot that wore me out after a while. Of course,
I can't imagine blaming you for your child's illness. That is just so wildly off the chart.
It's a common thing, Andy. People, I'm not saying it's common for people to look at it and say, "You're doing something wrong. That's why God's punishing you." But see, like in the scriptures, there was a man that was blind, and they asked him the question, like, "Why was this man born blind, Jesus? Was it because of somebody's sin? Was it a parent's sin, or what was it?" And he said it was none of these. That he was born the way that he was for the glory of God, and then he gave him a sight. That's how radical Jesus was, so. And
that's how I feel Braden's life's been. He'll go to church and he'll get up there and he'll just enjoy it. Like it's the greatest thing that's happened to him in his whole life every Sunday when you go to church.
Yeah.
So, and the older he gets, the more vocal about it he becomes. He thinks he's a preacher. After service, he'll go stand behind the pulpit and pull his stool up, and he'll, you can't understand nothing he says, but the Lord does, and I feel like his life is for the glory of God. Mm-hmm. I've never one time felt that it was because of me is why he was going through what he was going through.
Yeah.
I feel like that I quit caring what people thought about me a long time ago. And I still don't. I mean, I could really give 2 shits what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
I am who I am. And if you like it, fine. If you don't, fine. it was just one of those times that was really hard. You know, everything was hard. I was getting hit. I was working 12-hour shifts. I worked 5 days one week and 2 the next, and I never worked a full week. Either week, something would come up. We was in the hospital. We was here. We had to take him to do this. We had to go do that. Finances started crumbling. You know, all these things just come into this whirlwind of emotion. And I think my wife at the time was dealing with the fact that our son did have problems, not able to face it. And I didn't know what to do. You know, I didn't know what to do to help. I didn't know what to say. I just kept doing what I was doing. And eventually we grew apart. We had our third child. And during the pregnancy, things just kind of hit the bottom. There was days that we didn't see each other. I didn't come home till 7, 8 o'clock. And when I walked in the door, she was gone. I got the kids to bed. She went to work. She would go to the gym, go to work. I'd see her the next night for 10 minutes. And I think we ended up intentionally doing that so that we didn't have to deal with each other. One of my biggest things, I didn't want to argue in front of the kids. I didn't want to fight in front of them. I grew up, and that's how it was. You know, my mom and dad, they fought all the time, and they would be on the phone yelling at each other, and it's just like, man, I ain't doing this. And, you know, the problem started there, and it got to a point to where I just didn't care anymore. It got to a point to where all of those things that were taking place, it didn't matter to me. I could care less where she was at or what she was doing. I didn't care if she came home. I was there for the kids. I worked and I took care of them, and that was my main focus. You know, I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I made a lot of mistakes in the marriage that I've tried to fix now with my new wife, and not fall back into that same path, not fall back into the same problems.
Yeah.
Things were really good as far as spiritually, according to the church. You know, I was preaching all the time. It was going great. My ex-wife was never there. There was very few times. If I was at my home church, she would come, because you got to maintain your look on, you know, what everybody sees you as. But if I went somewhere else, she wouldn't go. You know, and it finally started getting to me. It finally got to the point where I was just like, you know what, I can't do this no more. I can't mentally handle the separation. And this went on before my third son was born, this had went on for a year or more.
Do you find it odd, Zach, that you're preaching at this time, right? Yes. So did it ever occur to you that maybe you had, you know, is there any way to not preach, you know, as you're a preacher and you feel that call, can you step back from it, you know, and try to focus on your family? Or, I mean, I don't know what it is. Do you just feel like a lot of pressures, or, because
at that time, yeah, I didn't feel like that was an option. Yeah. I felt like that was the most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
And that was taken away.
Because it's so odd, because you have the mountaintop experiences, you know, like you're in these, like, you'll be preaching, let's say, and you'll see somebody's life radically changed. And when you see that, you're like, man, I must be okay. Like, I'm all right, you know, because why would God use me for that person if I wasn't? Do you ever feel like that?
I felt like that all the time. And then I'd go home and it would be, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. And it was like you'd go from here to here in a matter of 30 minutes.
Yeah. Did you have anybody in your life that was trying to work with you? Like, did you have any adult members in the churches, or maybe in the other preachers that talked to you at that time?
I had a pastor at the time, but I don't open up about myself a lot. Yeah. So I kept most of what took place in my home to myself.
Yeah.
really have a lot of friends. I mean, I had quote unquote friends.
That's what I'm like.
He doesn't like people, remember?
I'm
Yeah.
a quote unquote friend.
No, Rick, you are friendly. You're one of the few.
Rick. Billy did Rick's name with air quotes.
Rick.
Yeah.
And then things started kind of getting crazy. My third son was born, or my third child, second son. He was born, and rumors started spreading around the church that I was messing around.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Right.
You know it's true. How do you find the
That
free
is the
time to
truth.
do that?
Yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way, Andy.
I guess that's true.
It's been going on for centuries.
See, I guess
millennia.
people figure it out, but that's what I think when people talk about cheating. I'm like, wow.
I was trying to figure out how they have the energy.
Yeah, time,
Amen.
energy, both. Yeah.
I just I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
Right.
Two women. I mean, one's hard enough, but two.
Yeah. No kidding.
You know, and it was one of those times where you're like, okay. And then it started getting worse and worse. It started being talked about more often. And at this point, you try to, share your side of the story, and you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, this is what I heard.
Yeah.
And people hear these things, and they're like, well, this is what so-and-so told me. They seen you.
Did you know gossip is a sin?
I was like, okay, well, that's cool.
Yeah. There's
And there come a point where I just quit trying.
You quit trying to defend yourself?
Yeah. And when I quit trying to defend myself, when I got a phone call from the church and had a big, nice deacons meeting with a pastor and got asked to turn in my license, I had till the end of the week, my preaching license, which doesn't even make sense. And then
Was that issued by the Holy Spirit or the state?
Oh,
or what?
this was issued by the church.
I've never heard of a preaching license.
I'm picking up what you're laying down. No, they're everywhere.
I'm
Oh yeah,
confused.
I can
every
get one
Baptist
online.
church in the South.
You have to have a preacher's license.
You
Get
don't
one
even.
at
I can go
Smiley's.
I think you can even.
Smiley's flea market and
Yeah.
sell them there.
Oh,
Is there an underground market for that? Because
yeah, it's called the.
Right.
It's like some sort of a worldwide church so that you can get ordained. It's possible. You can do it online.
You don't even have to know nobody to do it online.
Yeah, we were married by a friend of ours that was ordained online.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it works.
He's
And
married a couple of our friends. That's
state's
kind of
don't-
what he did with it.
the state actually doesn't really care. Like most marriage license, if you might find out they're actually not valid because people married them that actually weren't ordained, which is weird. You can get away with it. I mean, it's not like, of course, if you get a divorce, it could suck for you later if you could prove that you weren't actually married by an ordained minister. But who's going to go through all that trouble?
Depends on
Probably
what you
nobody.
got.
depends
What
on how
you
much
got.
money you got. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Wow.
No, but anyway, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those times in life I just shut down.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after that we split.
Oh yeah, that sounds brutal.
Yeah,
That sounds brutal, man.
I found out the root of most of that was coming from somebody very close to me. So
Her?
I'm not going to
We
go
don't-
into
Okay.
details.
I wouldn't go that
Yeah.
deep here, but what I will say is this: have you guys ever heard the story of like gossip is like toothpaste? Like when it's easy to get toothpaste out, but it's not so easy to get it back in the tube.
Right.
Or have you ever heard of the one where it was like the preacher took this young man had gossiped about somebody in his church, and so he went and gets the young man and he takes him up on top of the church, on the roof, and he takes a knife and he cuts open a feather pillow. Have you ever heard that? And he shakes the pillow and then all the feathers just go flying around. And he said, "This is what gossip is like." And he was like, "Oh, wow, I've learned my lesson." He said, "Not yet. Go pick up all the feathers and bring them back." That's the lesson.
Right.
Once gossip and rumors and people start talking, they think they have proof or whatever it might be. And so then it just starts permeating through all of the people, and the person that's being spoken about has no power. And the person that's speaking about it, they don't realize a lot of times what they're doing is actually perpetuating this problem. And then let's use another big word, promulgating through the whole, through a whole group of people.
And there is a tendency with stuff like that to assume guilt.
Yeah.
There is.
Of course. I mean, you're guilty until proven innocent. And in most cases, if you think about it, it's not, so when you see that in a group of people that, you've been in a relationship for a long time, do you think that feels good? I mean, No, not at all.
Well, and the thing about it is you know, you don't have the truth anymore. And you've said it, and I've tried to always live that way. You told me one time that I was the how was it? The something about telling the truth. I can't even remember now. It left me.
I told you that one of the things that I loved about you is that you never lied to me.
Yeah.
You told me the truth even when it sucked.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I knew about Zach is that he would look right at me.
Boldly,
and if something
you said
became
I was
true,
boldly honest.
yeah,
That's how it was. And you know, that's something that I really
Brutally honest.
brutally honest.
brutally honest.
And that's something that I've lived to try to be as honest, because at the end of the day, I don't have to keep up with stories and lies and who I told what. And if I just tell you the truth to begin with,
yeah.
I kind of had that one beat into me as a child. You know, I lied once or twice, and that was the end of that. I was like, man, this sucks. I ain't doing that again.
Right.
So did the deacons give you, and the pastor, they didn't give you a chance to tell your side of the story, or they just didn't believe you?
They did, but by this point, it was too
well
far
was
gone.
Perception is
You know,
what
it was-
reality.
and it was being recorded, and I was like, you know what? I'm not even talking. I didn't even attempt.
But think about it this way too. Put yourself in the pastor and the deacon's position, because you don't have to point at them and say that they're being bad. Their job is to be over a church.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct? So now they've got a body of people, and this whole thing's going on in the church.
And it's a problem at this point.
It is.
Right.
It's disrupting things. It's going on. And so you just stepped away.
Right.
Which is honestly
Probably the best thing.
The best thing that could have
the best choice
happened.
that was available.
Yeah.
But at some point, the
Had
pastor
that
needs to
been
have
where
a
it stopped-
sit down with the people and say, y'all need to stop this right now.
Yeah.
That's where a pastor needs to not worry about what toes he steps on and tell them to stop it
Yeah.
or get out.
Well, I mean, and I think that a lot of times if you step down, you kind of exit out. You know, like you walk away.
But then there's a perception of guilt.
Or
and
you're asked
he's-
just not to come back.
or you're asked not to come back, but you're not
church?
but there's no guilt. I mean, there's an assumption of guilt when you do that, right?
Right.
If somebody steps out of a political position, he resigns,
Mm-hmm.
we assume that whatever he was accused of doing, he did, whether it's the truth or not.
Right.
And sometimes you find out 20 years later, that wasn't the truth. But so I think the perception is by the people in the congregation, not like me and the rest of the people in this room, is that you were guilty, because I don't know what the rumors
absolutely.
were.
Yeah.
I don't assume
I
you're
don't
guilty.
either.
I assume you're innocent.
I
but
heard one or two, and I was
I'm
just
sorry.
like,
I didn't mean to-
okay. I'm still hearing things up until last week that I was like, man, I wish I'd have known that this was going on, because it sounds like I had a lot of fun. I mean, if I'd have been me then,
Oh boy.
I was having a blast.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
that I don't remember.
If you know, if I knew that it really took place. And that's where I was at. You know, it was one of those deals. And of course, we just bought a brand new car. We had just bought a brand new house. The house finished. I lived there a week, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I hated everybody.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was people was texting and saying things. Friends that I thought that were my friends turned and was, oh, you're a liar and you're lying to me. And it was just like, all right, you know what?
With a new baby.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Did you get a root of bitterness in you?
I still have a root of bitterness in me.
Yeah.
I still hate everybody.
Do you want rid of it?
Not some days.
You
some
feel
days
like
I
if you
don't.
get rid of it, that you're leaving yourself vulnerable for the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah. See, Christ tells us to love our enemies, and you know it better than me.
Yes, he does.
And those people that gossiped about you, whether it was true or not, which we know it was not true, but let's say it this way. Even all that gossip and all of the hate and all the things that came at you, you're commanded to love every single one of them. And you're a preacher.
Yep.
Whether you're preaching now or not, doesn't matter. The call remains.
Right.
You haven't destroyed your call. People might say, oh, but you destroyed your witness. Guess what? There's not a man alive who hasn't destroyed their witness in some fashion. If you don't know it, it's because it hasn't been told.
Right.
That's the only reason. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does things wrong. People try to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've endured all of this crap but yet down deep inside, you still don't like people.
I
Right.
never did though, so that's nothing new.
So what about loving people?
Sometimes you got to love people from a distance.
Yeah.
I try to love everybody.
Where's that Bible verse?
It's somewhere that's
First hesitations?
Yeah.
First hesitation. High five across the room,
Good one.
Sarita.
Yeah.
First hesitations 4:13.
You gotta. Sometimes I feel like the Lord gives you enough sense whether or not to get involved with things again.
What about preaching?
That's a topic for a different day.
No.
So
No,
are
it
you not involved in church at all now? How long has it been?
I go on Sunday.
Okay, how long has it been since you no longer you were no longer in the pulpit anymore?
It's been about 8 or 9 years. Yep.
But you still attend a church?
Yes,
Different church, I'm
Yes.
assuming. Okay.
absolutely.
Different denomination?
No, just a different group of people.
Yeah, but that's, that's okay. I mean, if it's what you believe, it's where they come from, then that's fine. It's really easy to point the finger at churches. It's so easy to do it. Do you remember your story, Sarita, how you...
I don't remember my story at all.
Tell me again, you were mad at your church because they were out there
Protesting at the abortion clinic
when you were going to get your abortion, but you went back how many years later? And they gave you the pulpit and you spoke about that, and all those people said, I had no idea.
They had no idea, and...
But then you got the love, right?
Yeah.
But how long was that root of bitterness? How long was it before you got back there?
It was probably 12 years.
Boom. 12 years that she felt things that actually weren't accurate.
But that day, that afternoon, I felt like I had lost 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize how long I had been holding on to these people that I hated because they were judging me the day I went in. They didn't even remember me going in because I was in disguise. But I thought they were judging me when really I was judging myself.
Right.
Like it was my own judgment, and nobody was harsher on me than me. And when that part of that was gone, it was gone, and it was amazing how different, you're right, getting rid of that bitterness felt. And at some point I pray that the Lord lifts that from you, but you got to be willing to let him take it from your clenched fist, because that's how I was. My fist, I was mad, and then I went, I'm pro-life now. I mean, that could be me. That's not where I choose to be. But at some point, maybe you'll decide to unclench and give it back to him.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not impossible.
I'm sure there's an amount to which Sarita is correct, that there's a difference between the amount of gossip and the actual people that were gossiping, and your perception of the gossip.
Yeah.
Obviously, in this case, the gossip existed. It's not a perfect parallel,
Right.
But I'm sure she's right that whatever you feel is an exaggerated version of the still awful but much smaller truth.
And I wonder.
I was going to say,
I don't know that it's exaggerated.
I
don't know
can't
if it
agree because you don't know the church world with the preacher world and how
Really?
small and
Yeah.
confined it is. It's not like Twitter where, somebody puts out something and you feel like there was 4 comments about you, but it feels like the world, when you're in a group like this,
They
it feels
talk,
like
talk,
every
talk.
single person is looking at you. You feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's almost like you can't wait to get out of there sometimes. I don't know if you've ever felt like that before, but I have.
I mean, the weight of that's extremely real, because I remember sitting in the driveway at my ex-wife's house and I was done.
Yeah.
I had a 380 and I had it in my lap and I put it to my forehead and that was it.
Yeah.
And
What stopped you from that?
the light turned on in the kitchen.
Really?
Yep. That was
The
the only
light?
thing that stopped me.
Yeah, the light came on.
She had got up to fix a bottle.
the light.
And I remembered that I got 3 kids in there that need me.
Yeah.
But it was real. I mean, that was it. I was done. I sat there and I prayed and I said, God, I've done everything you've ever asked. I've tried. I've gave it my best every day, and this is what is taken. And I said, this is what you're giving me in return. And I put that gun to my head more than once.
And I wonder if...
But that time there was the closest. I had my finger on the trigger, and that was it. I didn't care. And for whatever reason, it was 2:30 in the morning, and the light flipped on in the kitchen, and it hit me just like that you got 3 kids in there that need you. And what's their life going to be if you're not here? And what are they going to see if you're not part of it? And how are they going to be raised? And all these thoughts just came in, and I just said, all right, you know what? If this is the cross that you've got for me to bear, then I'll bear it. I mean, there's times to this day that we still find out things that were said. And you're just sitting there going like, what the heck what are you smoking? Like, this don't even make sense, man. Like, do you know me?
Right.
You know? But I was alone. I was alone. There was my family, my friends, so-called friends, my family. And I feel like I say friends loosely, in quotations, because if your friends are real friends, they don't turn their back on you. Period. It doesn't matter if you're the worst scum of the earth. It's like a mother with a child. And how many times do you see it on the news and on TV of kids just people that's killed somebody, or people that's done this, and and their mom sitting there, I still love them. I forgive them. Yeah. You know, and I feel like a true friendship, that's how a true friendship should be. You know, I'm going to love you, and I'm going to be there for you whether I agree with you or not. And if I don't agree with you, then I'm going to encourage you in a healthy manner that doesn't involve you wanting to go shoot yourself, or that doesn't involve you wanting to just end it all. I mean, there's nowhere to turn. And in those moments is when that I've found that I've become the closest to the Lord. I thank God for those moments. I thank him for those times and for what's taken place. No, I don't go to church often now. I've got a lot of reasons why I don't. I try to avoid going unless my wife asks me. I really try to sleep in every Sunday morning so I don't have to.
Well, let's talk about her. So you remarried.
Yes.
And she's actually in the studio with us. You can't hear her. She's over in the corner being quiet as always.
But her facial expressions are great if
She's
you've been
so
watching
awesome.
them. Yeah.
Oh, I love her. I love her so much. But you're remarried.
Yes.
And your kids are doing well.
Yeah, actually, Braden's not been in the hospital in 8 years.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because it was about a few months before that. That's when the lady come to me and said, "Oh, you're the reason. This is the reason. You know, you're a sinner. That's why he's so sick." And then all of a sudden, I'm the biggest sinner in the Fletcher, and he ain't been to the hospital since. Yeah. You know, he's not been sick. We haven't had procedures. He's been doing really well. So it was kind of it's like it was funny.
Whenever I love when Jesus talks about, he says, if you love those that love you, you know, don't even, he says the publicans, but I always say, don't even the Republicans do that. Don't the publicans do that? You got to love someone that doesn't love you.
Right.
That's the rubber meets the road. That's really where it's at. That's the tough thing to do.
Absolutely.
You know? And that's why I love you, and you know that. We've been friends for a very long time, and not in quotations. It's been for real. Like, I love you no matter what. No matter what, brother. That's how it's going to be. But, you know, I want to see you in the pulpit again, or at least I want to see you preaching on the street. I don't care where it is. I've seen what happens when you preach. I want to see it again someday. I hope that you will. You know, I really do.
We'll see if that's the path the Lord
Start
chooses.
preaching at your wife more.
No.
She just gave me, if you could see her look, Andy, it's like knives.
She hits like a man. I'm not. I'm good.
I bet you.
Good girl.
I bet. Yeah. Man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. I can't believe you did it. You did it. We've talked about it for a long time. Yeah, I'm really
We're not
glad you.
scary.
No,
not at all.
it's the story.
She's scary.
I'm not scary.
With that music?
Oh yeah.
No, I'm a pretty boy.
Well,
Nature boy. Not pretty boy.
that's not a proud boy.
Yeah.
No, not that either. No.
Man. No, but I really appreciate you being here, Zach. And thanks for listening. You know, thanks for telling people about our podcast. And you know, I didn't share anything about some of the things that I've experienced in my life just since I've known you. And you've affected my life in a lot of positive ways. In the scripture, when we used to go to the fire department, you know, we went to the fire department together, and those guys they didn't want to go to church because they kept getting called out. So we brought a little devotion to them, and we had some great times in there with those guys. And,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And, but
You could do that kind of ministry.
Yeah. I mean, I could do that kind of ministry, and I'm not a preacher.
But he can do it effectively. Just kidding.
Honestly, you're probably right. He'll get to him better than I would.
If the Lord calls you to it,
Yeah.
it'll be effective.
Yeah. Well, he certainly opened all those doors
Yeah.
for us back then, and a lot of things happened back then, which was awesome. But I would love to be able to hear. I can't wait. I'm going to have you back here in 1 year. I want to see how things are going.
Okay.
I'm not going to stop praying for you. I never will, ever.
Now we're in a good place now. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm, oh yeah, let's go to church, but I'm at a place where I don't hate people as much.
Yeah.
It's I'm starting to gain some of that back.
Yeah.
And it's a healing process. And I heard, you say a couple weeks ago, it's a healing process, and it doesn't matter whether it be an abortion or whether it be a loved one that passed or whether it be a bad experience. You've got to heal from these things, and that takes time.
Yeah.
Yes, well, it's called a process, not a day.
Right.
It's a healing moment. It's a
And
healing process.
A lot of people,
Like Tiziana says, that took a minute.
and a lot of people, they don't understand the damage that they do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the one on the end of that damage, you experience it.
Yeah.
I heard a pastor tell me one time that, because I didn't really understand what gossip was and why it was included in that list of sins right between murder and adultery or something like that. And he said it's really the murder of someone's spirit. Yep. And that's really what you put those words into a human being picture for me, because they murdered and had murdered your spirit and murdered your character, and almost to the point where you took your life.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that would have been murder on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we as Christians are sometimes the worst about it.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If he had done all of those things, he still deserved the love
That's true.
and the
Exactly.
affection and the attention and the prayers and the uplifting. He still deserved all those things,
He
even
sure
if he'd
did.
done everything those people had ever said. It
And
does not matter.
The Bible speaks about having a board in your own eye.
Yeah.
A lot of times I feel like a lot of it is we look at somebody else to see their problem. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I can look and say, man, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, and da 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 da. And then the whole time that I'm doing that, I'm covering up what I'm doing.
Right.
There's things inside of me that need to change.
Yeah.
There's things that I say and things that I do, and that I need to work on. But it's easier for me to say, well, look at them.
Yeah.
They look at how they're dressed, or look at what they drive, or look at where they go to church, or well, they're not a Christian if they do this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know these people, and we're too busy focusing on what's around us instead of us. And that's one of the things that I've really been working on here lately is stop focusing on everybody else. Focus on me. I got a lot of mistakes. I got plenty of mistakes to go around.
Stop straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel.
Yep.
That's what Jesus said. Or like the splinter.
Yep.
And it's weird. I was getting ready to say that. The splinter, he says, why are you so worried about the splinter in my eye when you've got a board in your own? But I think sometimes once somebody has said so many things to you, it's almost like you start creating a board in your own.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you see what other people are doing, and then that root of bitterness starts going towards other people.
Absolutely.
So that's something that the Lord has to work on us individually whenever you become a victim of gossip, but of anything. Again, like I said, wouldn't have mattered if you'd done it all. I would have loved you no matter what, period.
Well, I want to say something to you. So I heard you preach, and I heard you preach pretty much right after I got saved. And I came there that night. Rodney didn't come with me. And you were up there preaching, and there was so much fire in your preaching. It was exciting to me. It was awesome. And I couldn't wait to get home to go back and say, there's this other guy there that preached, and he did such a great job, and you have to hear him preach. And I don't really care what you did in your life. It does not make a hill of beans to me whether you did what was said about you or whether you didn't. Because if all that was going on, that's not what I was seeing on that up there behind that pulpit when you were preaching, and God was on it, and I felt it, and I was blessed by it. So I'm going to tell you something. If you ever change your mind and the Lord ever is willing to let you do it again, by all means, let me know where you're preaching, because I'm coming to hear it.
Now I want to come.
Andy,
You
I'll
got
let
no
you bring the
idea.
recording stuff. We'll record it and put it on the podcast. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Sure.
And you have to do what Cherry says. That's it. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
we'll all go see you Sunday.
Or she'll annihilate you.
Yeah.
I dare you.
I've heard a lot of preachers. I have. And when you preached, it really stood out to me, and it's never changed.
How
Never
long?
changed.
How long ago was that, Cherry?
I'd say it was right at 8 years, because
Probably
I'll be
right around the
saved.
time.
It was,
It
8
was
years
when
in
all that
August.
was it was right as all that was going on, because I
Yes,
remember them
that's
coming.
awesome.
Yeah.
I remember when you got saved. I was like 3 rows in front of you.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to know, I've never been one to really fit into any clique or anything, and I don't really care too much about fitting in anywhere. Rick,
Yeah.
you know this. But I'm going to tell you something. I know the Lord was using you. And brother, I'm going to tell you, we all make mistakes. You know me, and you know a lot of people in my life, and you know my kids and things like that. And I'm telling you, I got a lot of mistakes of my own, Zach, but I'm telling you, if you ever preach again, by all means, please let me know, because I'm coming.
Yep. Me too.
That's a decision. Me and Rick was talking about it here a while back, and he says, "Would you ever do it? If the Lord opens the door, I'll go."
Yeah.
I've never not went. I mean, I don't want to. I've never wanted to. You know, I don't. It's not my thing.
That root of bitterness that you got inside of you has got to go.
Yeah.
You got to let him have it. You got to let him have it.
Let him make
Absolutely.
sweet water out of it.
It does not matter what our pasts were. It does not matter. There are people out there that need to hear the gospel.
Yep.
And you bring it with fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So I want to hear it again. Man, what a great show. I'm so glad you're here, Zach. I love
It's
you,
good
brother.
to be here.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
So glad you're here. Cherry, I'm not going to have any outro music. We'll just
Good,
leave that.
thanks. Appreciate it.
Billy, Sarita, so glad. Andy, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And Mindy, thanks for being in the studio with us. It's a lot of fun. I see you guys looking at each other, shedding some tears. That's sweet. So go home and hit him like a man. Tell him
Make
to
him
get
really
straight.
cry.
It doesn't work.
Anyway, well, thanks for listening, guys. We will talk to you next time on the Burrows of Berea. Hey, guys, this is Rick from the Burrows of Berea. Do you know how much blood, sweat, and tears it takes to make a podcast? None. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't cost a lot. And so if you guys don't mind, if anybody would like to give to help us with these episodes, it would be great. We'll put out even more content. And if you go to our Patreon page, just search for the Burrows of Berea, you'll get extra notes, extra episodes, and it's pretty much free. $1 gets you a lot. Thanks, guys. We have
Beautiful. I
got
love
a
it.
very special guest here today on the Burrows. It's another testimony. Yeah, raise it up if you want. Woo! Jet
Now I get to
flying,
be part of it.
limousine riding. What does he say? Son of a gun. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I used to work with a guy who used to say that all the time.
Is there any chance you guys have seen Righteous Gemstones yet?
Yes,
Okay. I figured
It's
this might be
brilliant.
the right crowd.
it's brilliant.
It's a little over the top for me sometimes. That guy who's the guy that wrote all that with the dark hair.
Yeah.
His character is
You're talking about the son,
yeah, the dark haired
Danny
son.
McBride?
Yeah, that guy. That show kind of swings between brilliant writing and so painful to watch
Yeah.
that I will curl up into a fetal ball.
It's a cringy show.
because that's less work than turning it off,
Yeah.
I guess. But there are points of really good writing in it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how true to life some of those characters could be, though. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sure, across the broad spectrum of humanity, I'm sure those people have existed in a form slightly more dilute than what they portray, but still.
I bet you that there's a couple of televangelists that watch that, and it's like watching The Real Wives of Beverly Hills for them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh,
My son really is that stupid.
yeah.
we were talking about men of God with questionable sons, weren't we?
Yes, we
just last
were.
time we were here, I think.
That's all right. Yep.